So today I interview with a warrior we received for the first time in English, Shifu Lorne Bernard, that we received in our French podcast already. But we thought that we could explore his past, his own journey as a martial artist, and his legacy. And it was really a blast. He's really funny, and he has many anecdotes, and he's really interesting.
And if you want to support us, you can go to the Patreon. The link is right there. And so there's many level at really cheap price. It's like $1, $2, or $10 if you have a dojo and you want to co-host an episode with us. And thank you guys if you already support us. It's really much appreciated. And if you want to support without paying and nothing, you just gotta support, share, comment, and just like. Thank you guys.
Have a good podcast.
Les cicatrices nous rappellent d'où on arrive. Les combats qu'on doit livrer quand le destin chavire. Guerrier, on fera ce qu'il faut pour la famille. Cœur de lion, œil de tigre, on a la paix dans la mire.
The battles are never ending, I know. But we will get up and get on with the fight. And we'll do whatever for what is right. Just put your trust in us, in us.
So this week at Interview with a Warrior, we receive for the second time on the channel Lorne Bernard. Hi Lorne, it is an honor to have you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So today, it is your first time on the channel, so for solo. So we would like to know when you start martial art, how it come in your life, and with who do you start?
Okay. Well, I actually started with my father, a bit of boxing, as like so many children do. Taught me to keep my hands up and throw left, right, and don't cry when you get hit, kind of thing, you know. And that actually, when I was a kid, coming from a rough neighborhood, just that saved my butt on several occasions. Just keep your hand ups left, right, and won quite a few fights just with that. But then I did a bit of judo and CJEP, like in a gym class, so not even a white belt, basically. And then, but I did see I had an interest for that, for martial arts, and it was kind of exotic. And in 1983, I went to university and I saw a demonstration at Concordia University. And the man was letting people from the crowd punch him in the stomach. And I was like, what? And it was obviously not fixed. It was just anybody. And some big jocks came and punched him and he was just laughing at them. And I was like, wow, what's that? And then I remember he punched down. And I had never seen a punch like that because in boxing, you're not allowed to punch like that. And anyways, my friend, I was kind of shy. My friend says, let's join. So we joined in university. It's very inexpensive, maybe, I don't know, $40 a semester, at least in those days. And so we went and I wasn't very good, but I loved it. And my friend lasted like 2 months and I lasted 40 years, basically, you know. So
yeah, it was already White Crane?
Yes. The man's name was Augustine Wu. And he lives in Toronto now. And he had studied White Crane in a small town called Cebu in Malaysia. So what happens is in Malaysia, there's a lot of Chinese people who went to Malaysia from about 1870 to well, I'm not sure what year, maybe 1960. But it was a lot of them during the Second World War running away from the Japanese because the Japanese were just raping and killing everybody all over. So they went to Malaysia, but of course the Japanese ended up in Malaysia too. So what happened in Malaysia is you had a lot of real good old school kung fu like you don't even have in China anymore. Or not much, you know. And so this gentleman, Augustine Wu, as a child, saw this White Crane master like in his backyard practicing and asked to be a student. And then that school became quite famous. There was a lot of students. But he only studied, I'm not sure, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And he was a young man. And then he moved to Canada. Now, you guys are maybe too young, but Bruce Lee had just died. Kung Fu was the thing. And everybody wanted to learn. And there wasn't many teachers. And a lot of the Chinese people wouldn't teach non-Chinese for racist reasons, basically, or because they had been victims of racism and didn't want to teach guys twice their size or whatever, you know. So my kung fu comes from Malaysia, but it's actually from China, of course. And so this guy came to Canada. People saw him training in the park. Obviously, it was real kung fu, which was not the case because in those days, real kung fu there just wasn't any. You couldn't see it anywhere, you know. So he started teaching at Loyola and then Concordia where I met him. And then about 6 or 7 years later, he moved to Toronto and left me to school. And let me see. So that's 1983 I started. 1988, 89, he wrote a letter in the old way. You have to give a formal letter of introduction. Without
Yes.
the letter is no way, And he
Mm-hmm.
gave that letter to his teacher and his teacher's students in Malaysia. So I went to Malaysia with a letter, and that kind of changed my life, because then I went, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, this is real kung fu. I could see that the old master knew all these weapons and like could fight with them all, and I had fought with them all. And you're like, oh, you
Yeah.
fought with the staff for real? Oh yeah. Did you kill the
Mm-hmm.
guy? No comment. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and they do the Chinese medicine, and so that changed my life. And eventually, unfortunately, my relations with my first teacher weren't so great. But the heir of the system, the son of the boss, his
Mm-hmm.
name was Li Zhuqian. He was almost my age, so he was fantastic. I was in awe, but we also became friends. So sometimes we would have a drink together, whatever. So
Yeah.
the relation lasted about 10 years. Where I used to, in Chinese we say subo. Subo means uncle. So he's not
Mm-hmm.
my teacher; he's my uncle. Maybe like sensei senpai. So,
Mm-hmm.
so we call Subo uncle. So I would call him Subo, but really he was my teacher. But I was stuck in this no man's land of politics, which, as you know, in martial arts, there's a lot of politics. Uh, yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Everybody goes, whoa, yeah. So, anyways, eventually it got solved. He became my master, and that's how I got so proficient in Kung Fu.
And can you recall
Wow.
for us the first time you was in Malaysia? It was surely a shock culturally.
Oh, man. Uh, I fly to Singapore, and my teacher told me, cut your hair, because this is the 80s. I was a hippie. I had long hair. He tells me, if you don't cut your hair, they will cut your hair in the airport. And I thought he was joking. He's, dude, I'm not joking. They will cut your hair in the airport.
No way.
So I get there. I'm like, and then you get there, and there's a big signs everywhere, Singapore, Malaysia. Dada equals death. You know what Dada is? Drugs. You get caught one joint, dead. So that was a no-no. So you just feel like, oh my God. I get in the plane to go from Singapore to Sarawak on Borneo. So you have to fly over the ocean. It's like 45 minutes or an hour. The plane has propellers. Everybody's smoking in the plane. Everybody. And you're like, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I can't breathe. And then the guy looks at me nervous. I go, yeah. He goes, okay, the propeller planes are safer than the jets. I'm like, okay. Very interesting. And when we get there, half the school is waiting at the airport because I had this letter of introduction. And they're all big, really dark Chinese guys. So you expect Chinese guys to be of light skin, but because they live in the hot countries, they're like dark Filipinos. And I'm like, you guys Chinese? Yeah, okay. And they're all big fat guys, not what I expected. And the one thing that's very nice is that they're so in French we say accueillant, so friendly, so giving. We don't really have that here. I'm always shocked when I come back from Malaysia how we're cold. Maybe it's our northern. In Malaysia, I would be eating in a restaurant and I'd go to pay, and a guy goes, "That guy paid." I'm like, "What guy? I don't even know the guy. Some guy paid because I was a foreigner." All the time, all the time. Or people, I used to smoke back in those days because Chinese men all smoke. So if you're cool, you smoke. I don't smoke anymore, just so we're clear there. But I used to smoke back in the day. Guys would give you a cigarette. In Canada, they're hiding their cigarettes because it's $10 a pack, and it's just we're kind of cheap actually compared to them. And they don't have a lot of money, but they're very generous with what they have. So that the first trip I stayed a long time because I was young, so it was easy to do. Of course, when you have children and that, you can't. So the first trip I was there, I think 4 or 5 months, and I was training every day. The only thing is, people imagine, oh, you trained every day. You have to understand, it's like 110 degrees there, so you can't train in the afternoon. I mean, you could, but it's kind of dumb. So you train in the morning, the afternoon, you sit around, don't do very much, and then in the evening you train again. But
Can you describe for us what was your training basically?
sure, it's sad to say, but in the Orient by then, and now even worse, Kung Fu was already dying. The young people weren't interested anymore. Kung Fu was really big in the 60s and 70s. By the mid 80s, started to go down. I have friends in Hong Kong, which is like one of the meccas of traditional Kung Fu, is finished. There's just a few old guys like my age and older left. The kids don't want to learn. They want to do sports instead, or modern Wushu, whatever. So when I went to Malaysia, that was already happening. So there was a Kung Fu school. There wasn't many students. Uh, and the teacher gets discouraged, and he's just like, whatever, he's not making any money, so he's just opening it for whatever reason. So that's the truth. So it was kind of dirty. So my master lived in the school with his wife and two children and another one on the way. But so a lot of the training was on my own, and in fact, that's how I learned kung fu. People say like, "Oh, did the teacher tell you how many push-ups to do or how long to do the splits?" No way. He would look at me and go, "Train hard," and he'd leave. And he'd go play cards or whatever, and he'd come back. And now I understand. He was like, "Well, what do you want me to teach you? You need to practice, man. Shut up and practice." So I basically shut up and practice. And of course, then he would look, okay, fix this, 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 and this. But it was really up to me. And of course, I was lucky. Sometimes another Shibu uncles, this guy called Johnny Ting, would come by and train with me, which was great for me because Johnny Ting was like a very strong, big guy. So for me to train with a guy who literally could pick me up with one hand was great. I mean, you learn more when the guy is better than you and more senior. So I trained in the mornings and I trained in the afternoon on occasion, and then in the evening I trained again. And yeah, it was fun.
In the afternoon, were you like doing meditation or stuff like that?
They don't do a lot of meditation, at least at the lower levels. Okay, so again, meditation is something they'll tell you do it on yourself, and you have to do it in peace and quiet. Some of the guys, they do the qigong, something like sanchin, where you hold the air and shove it in your stomach, and then you let it go like that. It's left up to you to do it or not. So I didn't. You know why? Because I was 24 years old. I wanted to learn how to fight and kick a bag. I didn't want to do that. Now I'm starting to do it for it. I'll give you a funny story, but to show you the cultural difference. One time, maybe about a month and a half after I'm there, the master, so the head of the style, so this is like Masoyama or whatever, goes to me, "You want to spar?" So I'm like, "Pardon me?" He goes, "You want to spar?" So I'm like, okay. So I go to my bag and I get gloves and shin pads, a mouthpiece and a groin cup. He's on the floor crying. He's laughing so much, laughing his head off. Everybody's laughing their heads off. And I'm looking at them, and they're making jokes at my expense, their heads off. And then he goes, "No, no, no, throw the gloves away, throw the groin cup away, throw everything away." And then I learned they're training self-defense. They say, if your hands can't take it, what are you going to do in the street? If your shins can't take it, what are you going to do in the street? So instead, they don't hit as hard as when we have gloves, but they hit open hand and they train their shins, and it's a big difference because with gloves, half of the stuff that we do a lot of grabbing, so half of the stuff you just can't do. It's not an excuse, it's the truth. But with gloves, I see contact and I can grab his hand and pull whatever. So that was a funny culture. And then he would always say, "Don't worry, if you get hurt, I'm a Chinese doctor. I can fix it in the office." And I'm like, oh my God. That was fun. More like bruises, maybe the finger goes back if you didn't close your fingers. Nothing serious. They're not going 100%, of course. Just slapping hard, basically.
And I have a question because you mentioned modern wushu. So for listeners who can get the difference between kung fu and modern wushu or other style of kung fu, can you make
Sure.
us a little portrait of the thing?
So what I call classical or traditional or old school kung fu, people use different words, is the martial arts that people practiced, say, 150 years ago. Even by 1900, there was, how do you say, a tendency to water it down. Why? So you're doing a demonstration. You do something really ugly but good for fighting, you're no good. So instead, you jump, land in the splits, and do cartwheels in the crowd. Yay, bravo! So they were already, unfortunately, going in that direction. But what happened is, and then the Boxer Rebellion happened in 1905. That means all the Kung Fu guys, or many Kung Fu guys, went to fight the English, the French, and they got massacred because they thought they could stop bullets, which of course they couldn't. So Kung Fu got a bad reputation within China. By 1949, when the communists took over, elements of communist doctrine didn't fit with traditional kung fu. They thought it was feudal, so the communists don't like feudal things. They thought socialist brothers are fighting socialist brothers. So they said, you know what? You can't do this old school kung fu no more. Also, the old school kung fu was related to, it's a group of men training with weapons. It's like the perfect revolutionaries, right? And they had associations very often with triads who were associated with revolutions and organized crime. So the communists basically just banned it. No more fighting, no more training with real weapons. And if you get caught, this is a communist country. A bullet in the head. It's not a joke. There's no part two. There's no chances. Nothing. So they just blocked kung fu. So people continued in China practicing kung fu in secret in their kitchens and this and that. But it was a risk, at least for a certain amount of years. So what the communists did is they took Chinese folk dancing, Chinese opera, which had a lot of somersaults and this kind of stuff. I think Jackie Chan comes from Chinese opera, by the way. So and traditional kung fu, and they mixed it together and made what they considered to be acceptable. So it has elements of dancing, of theatrics, etc. And one of their ideas was by having rules where we could judge. Everybody does the same form, or kata, you say. It's easy to judge. In traditional kung fu, everybody's doing different stuff. It's hard to judge. So basically, we call that 现代 Wushu, modern Wushu. What I practice is 传统 Wushu, traditional Wushu. And unfortunately, as again, in martial arts, there's another rule. Business is business, right? So in the end, like any other business, it's about money, right? So by 1980, the Mao Zedong dies, the communists realize, in the West, they like the modern Wushu, but they also like the traditional. But now they've invested all their energy in modern. So what do? They just tell the foreigners, oh, that's traditional. Most people can't tell the difference. So today I'll see like traditional praying mantis. I'm like, that's not traditional. Traditional eagle claw, that's not traditional. And then some is traditional. So it's very confusing. So when you see kung fu at this place or that place, some of it is traditional, some of it is modern. But unless you're an expert, you can't tell. I'll give you a hint. For example, you see the guy, he's going to do a flying kick, 1, 2. So he runs, then he does a flying kick. That's not traditional. Try to do that in a fight. In a fight, the guy, you jump and you kick him. You don't run 7 steps and then jump. So why do they run? So that they can jump high.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's modern. Huh?
Or it's, you see the difference? Like, yeah. Or you see the guy pushes and his leg goes back. You ever push a car? Because your leg doesn't go back. You push forward. You push from the ground out. So if you see the guy pushing, his leg goes back. It's not traditional,
Right. And
they're all good. It's just differently.
In the other podcast we did, Philip Munn was talking about the style going to the Olympic. It was the new modern Wushu he was talking about, right?
Yeah. Now they might, for example, in the modern Wushu now in China, there's some effort, but it's kind of too little, too late. They spent millions of dollars promoting Shendai Wushu, modern Wushu, and practically nothing promoting traditional. Now the traditional is dying. I'm the young generation. I'm 57. The old generation are 90. It's too late. So some of it is getting saved, some of it isn't. But and so sometimes in the Wushu tournaments in China, they might have a traditional division. So maybe in the Olympics, I don't know the politics. I kind of stay away from politics and stuff like that. It's a waste of time.
And in the other podcast, you mentioned you practice other style during your life. Can you talk about it?
So I was in love with White Crane. It was kind of my first style. But at the time, my first teacher really wanted me to learn Wing Chun because he was teaching Wing Chun. So I studied it. I was never in love with the system. And it's Wing Chun from the Sunny Tang lineage, which is a well-known, a very well-respected lineage. Sunny Tang to Moyat to Yip Man. So it's authentic Hong Kong Wing Chun. So I studied it. It's just, it's a great system, but it's very narrow in scope. So when you study something that's very wide in scope and you go to something narrow, sometimes you find it boring. It doesn't mean it's no good. I'm saying it's just boring. It's like if every day you punch the bag, at sometimes I'd like to practice sword or spear just to make a change. I'm tired of punching a bag. You know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of my attitude. So I studied Wing Chun and I taught it for a few years. And at some point there was a man from northern China called Xu Gongwei. And he was a very nice man. And he was like 77. And he did a northern style called Cha Chuan. And I met him. And he would come to my house once a month. And so I studied kind of like almost the opposite of Wing Chun and White Crane, a northern style with all these big movements. By the way, that Cha Chuan style is the main style that they created modern Wushu from, because it was a big open, lots of kicks. Jeremy you would be more skilled at it than I was, I'm sure. So I had fun doing that. And over the years, I used to do a lot of demonstrations. And one time I met a Sifu from Hong Kong. And he did Chole Foot. And anyways, long story short, I kind of dropped the other two. I continued doing my White Crane, and I became friends with the Chole Foot master, who I respected greatly. His name is Chu Kwok Chong. Now he's in Hong Kong. And I learned Chole Foot too. So now you can say my wife is White Crane and my girlfriend is Chole Foot. I see my girlfriend once a week and my wife 7 days a week, kind of thing.
What is Chalwi foot?
Chole Fat is a mixed style, northern and southern. It's very famous for its fighting, and he does a version of it called Boxing Chole Fat, which is kind of like the black sheep of the Chole Foot family. They're even more famous for their fighting. And this Sifu is like 5'3" and could knock out an elephant with one punch. You're just like, oh my god, when you see him go, you're, oh, it's all these wide swinging punches, like what we would call haymakers in boxing, like bolo punches and big wide hooks. But the thing is, they're specialists in doing them. So you look, oh, he looks open, but he knows how to use it. He's going to close your gate, and then he's going to throw this punch from hell, which will knock you out. So it's just, if you're fighting a real Chole Foot guy, be careful. He's got knockout punches, and they'll often do the hook and turn and do a spinning back fist, knockout, right away. So it's a nice style. And it shouldn't really combine with White Crane, but I made it work for me, so that's it.
But it sounds like too soft style, but have you ever tried a hard style, like a close fist and stuff like that?
Chole Foot is slightly harder than White Crane, but it's odd because to have power in these punches, you have to be very loose in the shoulder. So you have to use your weight, transfer your weight, and your arm has to be loose. If you tense up, you're slow as hell. So anything harder than that, no. But I mean, you train Chole Foot, it's considered an external system. You're going to be tired and bruised and sweaty and etc.
And then after the Malaysia, when you come back here,
I was just starting. I was honestly like a brown belt who had a school. The school was given to me. It was either close it or keep teaching. I was by no means an expert. And I was honest with people, which is the most important. Just be honest. Just say, this is what I know. If you want to study with me, okay. I'm not a master. But of course, after I came back from Malaysia,
you had your black belt, yeah.
Yeah, well, we don't have black belts, but yeah, in Malaysia they definitely made me the equivalent of a black belt. In the traditional kung fu world, they there's certain things that are like this means you're at instructor level. So one is one of the forms. So this form in White Crane we call Chisa Disa. It means 72 ground demons. So just the name kind of tells you 72 ground demons. There's a lot of tricky elbows and rolling on the ground, and people want to learn it. Then they look at it. I don't want to learn that form. It looks hard, kind of thing. So I learned that. Also, the Quan Dao is a big like a halberd, a big like a sword on the end of a staff, like a naginata but big. That's another weapon. If you know that weapon, now you're instructor level. So they made sure I knew all the instructor level material. I came back the following year in 1990. Right away, I invited Master Lee again to Canada. So he came and he stayed 3 months. So in 2 years, I spent 8 months with the Grand Master. And then the following year, my best student went to Malaysia. We just kept going back and forth over the years. I think I went 5 or 6 times. My master came to Canada 5 or 6 times. And when he came like 3-4 months because you want to make the best of it,
Yeah, sure. And did you ever start like competing through the process or?
A little bit. You have to understand, again, at this time, if I went to a karate tournament, in fact, one time I went to Jean Fernet's tournament, and at those days it was a big tournament, and I did double broadsword. Nobody even looked at me. And then I realized, okay, I probably need to bring it up a notch, but also the judges have no effing idea what I'm doing.
Because it was an open competition, I guess.
It was an open competition, and then the guy next to me is doing like a kama with a spinning back kick, which if he tried that against, it's not traditional. That would be a stupid thing to do in combat with those weapons, to throw a kick. You know what I'm saying? But regardless, that doesn't matter. But there wasn't many kung fu tournaments. There was one called the Canadian Chinese Wushu. Wushu means kung fu, and those I did compete. The first year, I lost because I didn't have a backup form. I was tied and I didn't have a backup form, so I learned something about competitions, And the second year, I won first place, and the third year, I won first place in forms and weapons. But of course, it was easy. I was with the Grand Master coaching me for 3 months before the competition, and then I got a few gold places and I got out of competition. Yeah.
And did you ever introduce student in it? After that, did you have students through your school?
I had many students go and competition isn't our main thing, But if there's a good competition and I have people who want to compete, of course they'll go, you know. But we're going to tend to go more to kung fu competitions because of the judging. It's just like if somebody asked me to judge jujitsu, I know nothing about jujitsu. How could I possibly judge it? So it's just not fair, you know. So over the years, I had in the United States. There's this United States Wushu Federation, which is a big federation, and we went a few times for the full contact there, and that's very entertaining. Full contact, elbows, knees, flying punches, whatever you want. Throw the guy on the ground. So I had one student who's going to open a school probably this year, next year, who won 3 times in the U.S. Wushu.
Oh wow, that wouldn't be here. They couldn't do that fight here, right? Like it wouldn't be legal. Okay, yeah.
But what's nice is it's really well done. It's really professional. I can send you a link. US Wushu. You Google Lei Tai. The judging is fantastic. It's clean. You know, it's safe. So it's well done. But and a lot of it is amateurish because most kung fu guys have no competition background. We don't know where to go. So a lot of the guys are hopping in for the first time. And then where it gets dangerous is when there's a guy who did 50 competitions fighting a guy who is his first time. So that gets dangerous, you know. And in French we say la civière. How do you say that in English?
The medic.
The paramedics come 2-3 times a day and leave with a guy on a stretcher. Like literally, guys broken shoulders. It's quite rough, you know. So anyways, my student did great, and we were proud when we have Canadians who are winning first places, second places, third place for the United States. It feels good.
Yeah, for sure.
And what you are saying concerning the weapons is basically when you go to the tournament, everybody else was doing mostly Japanese weapon, and you came with your Chinese weapon.
Yes, and it's not because it's Japanese or Chinese. A lot of it was like modern interpretation of weapons. So
that's why I think it's because open was trending, and you came with something more like traditional, and I think it was missing division back then. Because it was like
probably
new.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. This is probably 1991 or 2. I don't remember. You know, a long time ago. I could just see the blank look on the judges' faces, and I was like, "Yeah, there's no way I'm gonna do well here." You know?
Yeah, for sure. But if you put your form in traditional category and their form in open form, then you know you can have a good competition. Then that's what we have now, because in WKC we have like hard style now, we have freestyle, we have not kung fu, soft style, so you can do pretty much your style, you know.
See what you almost said something, but you held it back. But this made me laugh so many times. Oh, you should go in soft styles, and I'm looking at the guy. Really? So you think White Crane, Chole Foot, and Hungar are soft styles? Man. You know, it's a mistake. You know, so why the expression soft styles? Because they were looking at Tai Chi and they were looking at Wushu guys in pajamas doing all kinds of twists and twirls. But you know, it's just nothing to do it. Imagine I stop on and the guy's doing Sanchin Kata really hard, and you're like, "This is soft style." Like, what are you talking about? You know, like, so it's
No, you would put your form in a hard style. I think
so.
If you would come,
yeah, probably. And how come did you get in contact with the Chinese culture here? Because you mentioned in the other podcast that your wife is Chinese, I think.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Did you meet her out there, or when you come back?
I think, you know, this is just nothing to do with Kung Fu. I always like the exotic. You know, it's like, so I'll give you an example. One of my Chinese friends, he always dates blonde girls. So I always go, "Why do you date blonde girls?" I go, "Why don't you date Chinese?" He goes, "They remind me of my sister." So for me, I'm interested by the exotic, the dark-skinned girl, the Chinese. That's just personal, you know. And I met my wife and fell in love, and that's it.
Basically, that probably allow you to know the culture better.
It probably helped a lot. Also, over the years, I would bring masters to my home. And I'm not so sure how many French Canadian women would have been thrilled about having some guy from China who doesn't live like us, who doesn't. It's a big difference, you know. For months, like my master in Chinese, we say "ke." "Ke" means guest, a guest in a formal sense, like he's a guest. Okay, so he would eat and leave his dish on the table and walk away, and my wife is looking at him like, you know. But and I understand in his culture that is what's done. When I would go to Malaysia, I would try to wash dishes and they would shove me away. "You're our guest." But in our culture, that's a little, whoa, not such a great guest, right? So how many women would have tolerated that? I don't know, and for months, I mean, I've had many masters live at my house most of my life. The neighbors never say anything because they go, well, that guy's crazy, kung fu and swords everywhere. So,
And how many weapons did you have in your style? Because I saw some picture from your school, and
the Chinese like to use certain numbers because of religious reasons. 18, 36, 72, 108. It has more to do with religion than anything else. So we say we have 18 weapons, but there's actually a lot more. There's probably 22, 23. Sometimes they won't even, there's one weapon I'm not even allowed to talk about. It's secret. They just shut up. That's the rule. Yeah, there's just, you're not allowed to talk about it. And some weapons is like an umbrella, a fan. So an umbrella today, like if I want to make money, I can do an umbrella seminar and make $5,000-$10,000. People really want to learn that, because it's cool and it's practical. In the old days, that was like not even considered a weapon. But we know how to use it. You want to learn how to use it, but it's a real weapon was a single broadsword, double broadsword, spear, whatever. But now, umbrella, fan, these are very popular. Cane is very popular too, you know. And some of the weapons in the old days, they didn't like to teach, like double daggers, because that's a killer's weapon. So in our world, like, if the people want to kill each other, they'll use guns or bombs, basically, in Montreal anyways, In Malaysia, now they're starting to use guns, but until recently, people fight with knives still. So if you teach people how to use a knife, you understand he might use it.
Yeah, right.
So it's different, and when it's using knives for real, this is very dangerous. Like for instance, we hold a knife like generally like this, like a dagger. So if you hit somebody like that, he's not going to live because you just went 7 inches through his body. There's no way he's gonna. It's not a cut. That cut is bad, but this is even worse.
This is a stab, yeah.
Yeah, it's a stab, basically, So, yes, there are a lot of weapons, and the problem these days is finding somebody who wants to learn half of them. You know what I mean? Like, I did because it's my job, but and I practice it because it's my job. But after you learn 3 spear kata and 10 staff forms, and you're like, enough already.
And what would you say to somebody who could ask what is the use in modern days to learn, for example, the fan, for example, as a weapon?
Sure, of course. So first of all, the weapons are part of the system. You'd be surprised how many things are in the weapons forms. So sometimes I spar and Shifu, where'd you do that? Well, what is that? What is that? I'm like, it's our kung fu. Well, where does it come from? Oh, the footwork. Oh, that's in the staff. It wasn't in the kata. It's in the staff. So if you're smart, also if you can say you strike down with your hand. Now we do it with the staff. Guess what? If you do it 1,000 times with the staff, you're going to hit harder. True or not? If you have a low stance, which we like to use for fighting, if you have a heavy staff or halberd in your hand, it better be low, or else you're going to tip over. So the weapons training is part of what we do. You just can't separate it. And then the other thing too, it's a link to the culture, of course, the heritage, the martial heritage. So in the end, kung fu has to be more than just fighting. I mean, if somebody hurts my family, I'm just gonna get a gun and a knife. Oh, are we fucking around here or not? I'm from Chamonix Laval, it's rough there. If you want to party, I know what to do. I got a baseball bat. But why would I get? You know what I'm saying? So we're doing this for art as much as for self-defense. True. So also when you learn a long weapon, a short weapon, a double weapon, a flexible weapon, at some point anything becomes a weapon. So I can use a pen, a glass, a cell phone, a credit card, the lamp, the rope, whatever. So that's the other. A chair. I used to practice with my master sitting in a chair, taking the chair, hitting the guy and sitting it back. I used to do hundreds of these. Boom! And then that's gangster style. No, that's real kung fu. It's for fighting. So
Yeah, that's pretty much the point, right?
originally, yes. And then, as I was saying, for me, now it depends. Like, say, Thai boxing. I love Thai boxing. I think Thai boxers in the ring, band #1. These guys that's what they do. They're really good at it, This being said, I would get bored out of my brains. Imagine 10 years just kicking the bag all the time. At some point, like, whoa, there's got to be something else. So then practicing spear or practicing knife or practicing it just becomes a form of having fun for me, amongst others. Just making it interesting.
Right, and by the same time, you're getting in shape and you keep training.
Absolutely, and it's all related. It's not like the moves in spear or the body positions in spear are different from the ones in the hands. In the traditional system, it's all the same moves. So I'll get up for a second. If I stand up and I do this, right? So the guy kicks me and I block, I hit his leg. But if I do it with a knife, a spear, a staff, two swords, it's the same move. So people think, oh, it's hard to learn all these things. No, it's not. It's the same moves except with a weapon. So it's actually not hard at all, really. There's something a little difference, but
And that's why I tell my student every time, it's if you do something, do it 100% right. If so, when you're gonna do it, it's gonna be easy all the time. If you don't do it right, it's gonna be hard all the time. It's like, come
that's
on.
right. And if the fundamentals are perfect, if your stance is perfect, well, then everything's easy to do.
Right. Because you don't botch the job. You do it right all the time. You don't have to lie to yourself. And we see in too on your Facebook and stuff that you have like Kontact Sport. You own it. Is it that? How did they come?
What
Where?
happened is,
When?
thanks for the plug, by the way.
Yeah. Well, amazing
what
place.
happened is, thank you. I think by 93, 94, I actually had a degree in political science. So I could have worked in politics or something related to politics. And I was teaching Kung Fu. In those days, I was making, say, 30,000 a year, but this is 1988. So it was okay for a young man. I had jobs. Then I got jobs offered to work in Quebec City in Parliament. And I was like, for about the same salary, I'd rather do Kung Fu. So then I was doing Kung Fu and I said, but I'll never get rich. The only way I'll get rich is if I lower my standards or, in those days do a Taibo class or whatever it was. It's not what I wanted to do. It's okay, but it wasn't for me. So I said, what can I do to still do something I love? And then I saw some other gentlemen that opened stores and I went and I opened the store and I was lucky. My father worked for Tony Accurso. And Tony Accurso owned the shopping mall, Les Galeries Laval. And so it's basically friends. And Tony goes to me, open a school in Laval. I already had one in Montreal and a school/store. And I go, no, it's okay. And with me, he was a very nice man. He goes, Lorne, what can you afford to pay? And I go, I can't afford much. How much? I says this. He goes, okay, done. Here's the contract. So I got a good deal. And that's how I started Kontact Sports. And I was a president of a Kung Fu Federation. So I knew at least 30 Kung Fu schools. So maybe half of them might buy off me. So just like Jukado, when they opened, of course, he had this judo and Aikido business, right? Gene Sport was because he was affiliated with the kickboxing. He did fantastic. And also because he was the only guy in Canada in those days when he first started. So for me, I had a foundation with the Kung Fu, and which later on, expanded to karate and all the other arts. So now Kontact Sports is doing quite well, yeah.
We at our school, we purchase sometimes some stuff from your business too.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and then you open the store that allow you to concentrate on your school as a business, as a job.
Yeah, so then I could have the store make, I'm making up a number. Say I make 30,000 with the store and then 30,000 with the school. I'm like, oh, okay, I can live this way. I'm not rich, but I'm happy,
Yeah,
and the store
totally.
is fun. I like to work, so I like picking up boxes. I like meeting people, and the store. I met so many martial arts people there. It's fantastic. They're all my friends now.
When I go there, it's like Toys R Us. It's like Toys R Us for us. I'm like, oh wow, Kibotan, some forms, some thing, a belt.
Pulling out their husbands.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes I see the wives. No. You're not going to spend all your money here. He's just one of those, and no, he's pulling them out. But it's really fun now. I have so many friends. Or seventh dans, eighth dans, whatever. So many, and in the martial arts, 99.9% of the people are really nice people, very pleasant. Because once when you meet a jerk, he's always nobody. Anyways, he's not skilled in martial arts. When the real ones are always super nice, and we get to know each other and develop knowledge about each other and respect. And some of my very good friends now one is a Shotokan guy, one is a Taekwondo guy. We're really good friends. So I love that.
Yeah, that's nice. And then what is the future for your school? Because now you have one in the US. Did you operate yourself in the US or it's a student?
No, for me, I'm a kind of old-fashioned Chinese way. I care that the guy is qualified to teach. I'm very difficult about that, okay? Because, the standards were. After that, it's not a business relationship. I just tell them this is what you need to do. They give me very little a year, maybe buy their t-shirts off me, or that's about it. I don't really care. So the guy in New York, what it is in the year 2000. So I guess by 2000, 2005, it was my peak. I was young and strong. So he comes to visit me. He's a fourth dan in Goju Ryu. And by coincidence, my master, the head of the White Crane style, was in Montreal. So he comes with his senpai, who's of course a Goju Ryu master, and they come to visit us. A very friendly exchange. They're very classy suits and ties, and so we practice together. I show you yours, you show you mine. Because it's Goju, it already looks like White Crane anyways. So we're like, oh wow, it's very interesting, very close already. But they were really impressed with my master because he's like fast as lightning. So a long story short, this guy John Jackson he asked me to become my student, and I said sure. And he kind of didn't do the certification as I would normally because he lives far away. Plus, he was already a master. He's a fourth dan. I knew he's classy. I knew he's intelligent. I knew he's a nice guy. And I was right. He's one of my classiest students. He's always there for me. If I ask him one thing, it's 100% he'll do it. And he trains hard. So, great.
And it's more like keep the style alive too.
I'll tell you a funny story. So when he first started learning with me, we do something push hands. It's like sparring when your hands touching, right? So this guy's I'm more of a technical guy. I'm not an athlete, not in my mind. But this guy is a big, strong, big American, So we're doing push hands, and I'm hitting him more often than not. And then, bam! I get a reverse punch, and I could feel it like in my brain. I'm like, oh my god, that was really hard. So after I kicked him really hard, and we kept training. 5 years later, he tells me, that time? I go, yeah. He goes, I couldn't drive. I go, what do you mean you couldn't drive? He says, I couldn't use my leg. It was numb. He had to drive with his left foot all the way back to the U.S. and I was like, I have to tell you, you punched me really hard. I didn't want to show it, but then later, wow, man, this guy's tough, So good times.
No, that happened to me once. Kyushi did something in a class, and then he was like, he did a dragon head, like that. So with the two little knuckle, and I was that doesn't seem very effective.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
So I learned that day, and so I did a hook, he blocked, he did the dragon head in the muscle, and then I was driving like that, one arm. I couldn't use that arm for like half the day, and I was like, Jeremy, shut the hell up in the class now, and.
We all learned.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that dragon head in my White Crane is our main fist. This is the only fist we use.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing that all the time.
Yeah, that seems
deadly.
Similar
That's deadly.
to Wei-Chi-Ryu. What Wei-Chi-Ryu is doing.
Yes. In fact, I'm friends with this Wei-Chi-Ryu master. I think he's in Nova Scotia. Jim Mahoney. I've seen his Wei-Chi-Ryu. It's excellent. And it really does. I mean, you could say Wei-Chi-Ryu is a kung fu system because it is. I mean, I look at it and I'm like, wow, this is so similar. It's ridiculous. They're a little bit harder than White Crane, and the stances are different, but the techniques and the flavor and how they use it is very, very similar.
And what is the future for you? You say your prime was like in 20 years ago. So how do you envision the future of your school? Now you probably start thinking about retiring.
I had a few projects. I wrote a few books. I just wrote another one. I made a DVD. The DVD was important to me because it's featuring my teacher. Now he passed away. So now that DVD is like, man, who was the smart guy who filmed the Grandmaster? Because if you had asked my Grandmaster, can I film you back in the day, he would have told you to jump off a bridge. You know what I mean? Fortunately, because we were friends, I got to film him. So that's what I've done so far. And now I just want to relax and train and former des instructeurs and create the next generation of instructors. I have a few guys who are quite skilled, and I have a few more that just need that little push. But the problem is, at a certain age, they get married, they have children, and then they don't have as much time, and that's a tough. I can't change that, but I'm trying. Yeah, here. Just came out last week, actually. So this was written by my teacher, Grandmaster Lee, and it was written in Chinese. long story short, I told him, the book is too short because in Chinese you could write 4 characters and you could talk about those 4 characters for a long time. But if you just read it, it's just 4 words.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So I had to take the 4 words and explain it by 5 paragraphs because people don't understand.
Yeah.
It's just the Chinese way of writing. And
Oh
so
wow.
I lengthened the book. I explained some of like what they call idioms. So he would say, use the 4 principles of swallow, spit, float, and sink. Most people, what the hell is he talking about? But then I'm like, I know what he's talking about. So then I explain. So swallow, my hand comes back. Spit, it shoots back out. Float, sink. So every movement has some of those inside it. So anyway, so we basically I became co-author. So myself and my teacher, and I tried to do a good job because he passed away sadly just before the book was out. So we really did everything we could to make it right.
Oh wow.
It's available at Kontact Sports. It's also available. Actually, if you just go to Kontact Sports, press White Crane, you'll find it right away. I also have some American customers. There's a book company called Plum Publications, owned by Ted and Debbie Mancuso. They specialize in hard to find, mainly Chinese martial arts books. But I'm talking like the hardest book to find, they probably have in stock. You're like, are you kidding? So they buy a lot of my books, and we're good friends.
Okay, sure.
So it's available with Plum Publications and Kontact Sports.
So we're gonna put the link to Contact Sport for people who wants to read the book. It's in English, right?
Yes, it's in English. I could write it in French, although it'd be a little bit more difficult for me. But je parle français. So the problem is the market is small. So look, I'll sell like 40 books in Quebec. I'm like, you know how much a translation costs? My God, it's a fortune, like, so even if I write it in French, I still need to get it proofread many times, especially French, which is a difficult language, les fautes d'orthographe, etc. So I'm going to be full of spelling mistakes, and I forgot to put S here and this and that, and for 40 books. Meanwhile, in English, I sold some to Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, the United States. So that's why. But of course, if I have a student says, "Can I translate to French?" Please do. I'll be thrilled.
Yeah, sure.
It's just business, basically.
Mm-hmm. And time, because you have other job.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Oh wow. So we're gonna read that book for sure, Manu, and do a review.
Thank you. What we did in the book too is set the story straight, because unfortunately we're getting like our White Crane is a branch called Flying Crane, and we were starting to hear guys claiming to do Flying Crane here and there, and sometimes it's not that they're lying. They might have a form called Flying Crane. But we're the style called Flying Crane. So the guy might not be dishonest, but I told my teacher it's time to set the record straight. So now we said, look, we are the Flying Crane. This is our lineage, and here's the 300 pictures from the 50s. These are old pictures, like so. Here's the proof. It's anybody looks, yeah, okay. There's no way you can argue that. Even the Shaolin Temple doesn't have pictures from the 1950s. We have hundreds. So we wanted to do that, and then I wanted to tell the story of his father. And it's normally my teacher would tell me after a few beer when he's in a good mood. Then he tell the time my father this and the time my father. So I remembered them all and I wrote them down with his permission, of course. And so it makes for a good read. My first book was written, I would say, 1990, a little bit amateurish. Computers were new, the internet didn't exist, just to put it in perspective, okay? My second book was the first book done properly. The second book was about the history and the basic movements. So we have very, like a 1, 2, 3 is one basic move, for instance. So I put all the basic moves, the history, the theories, like I was talking before, swallow, spit, float, sink, etc. So it's a good, I won't say a Bible, but a good solid introduction to White Crane. The third book, this one here, is more details about our history, the Grandmaster, a lot of applications, because I know applications sell books, basically, and some on staff. My Southern styles of Kung Fu, if there's one thing they're good at, it's staff, like really good at. Just like if you want to learn knife fighting, the Filipinos, these guys are good. You know what I mean? There's no low kicks, Thailand, katana, Japan, staff, Southern China. So in our White Crane, we're not the only ones, but the staff was really excellent. So my Sifu put some staff techniques and some advice, and the average person will read it. Oh, it's nothing, and I'm like, yeah, you don't understand. You want to read that again, and you want to think about it, and you want to do it. This is important, you know. But so I'm happy that he did it because it is important. Yeah. The problem with these things is sometimes your teacher gives you advice, and if you're not of the proper level, you can't appreciate it. You know, it's like the guy says, hit with your body, hit with your whole body, but the guy doesn't understand what you mean. And, you know,
Yeah, you cannot say a message that someone is not ready to understand.
Yeah,
Basically.
but often you receive something and then you don't understand it, and it grows on you, and later you will get it.
there's a famous Kuntao Silat master who I met only once, but I was impressed. His name is Willem de Tours, and a very tough man, very skilled. And I saw this is his quote, not mine. I don't want to steal somebody's quote. And he said, Bruce Lee said, what did he say? Study everything and absorb what is useful. And Willem de Tours said, study everything and keep the stuff you don't understand till later. In other words, you might find out it's useful in 20 years, so don't just throw it away. So I learned this technique. It's like a circling hand. I'm looking, hey, this is bullshit. How could I stop a reverse punch with the circling hand? You know what? Now I can do it easily. So it's just a question of
I think it's
what level
in
you're
the
at.
other podcast we did with you that we discussed the fact that, the youngins, they came to our school and often they say some stuff like we should do real fights, like MMA, blah, 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 to learn how to fight. And then in the other podcast, we discussed the point that, in 20 years from now, if you had like 8 concussion doing MMA fighting, full contact stuff, and etc., then you won't be able to defend yourself because you will be disabled. You will have problems. Your body will be broken everywhere and stuff. And then when you explain it like that, okay, I get it. So, but you still have to train like the more realistically possible. But I mean, if you broke your knee, you broke your arms and stuff, it's not useful.
Well, what's self defense if you're hurting yourself? How are you learning self defense? You broke your knee, you broke your ribs, you broke your hand. At some point, it's getting kind of stupid. Now, when the guys are doing it for business, if the guy's a professional boxer and he broke his hand, but he made $35 million, that's a choice. But I see guys come into my store. Yeah, you want to sponsor me? $5,000. I'll write your name on my butt. I tell the guy I wouldn't give you $50. First of all, I don't like my name on your butt. Second of all, you're probably going to lose in 7 seconds. And unless my name is on your butt for 10 years, nobody's even going to notice. And these guys are tough guys. There's no doubt they're tough guys. But as you said, how much does the chiropractor bill amount to after 20 years? 20,000, 30,000? Come on, so I agree with you. The traditional martial arts. 2 days ago, I did a seminar with a Mak Chikong Sifu, 70 years old. His stances are so low, it's unbelievable. 70 years old. I asked him, what do you do? He just smiled. He answered me very nice. But there's a perfect example of how martial arts can keep you fit to 70 years old. His low stances are better than most young people's, So yes, if you want to if you're fighting somebody tomorrow in a street fight, yeah, by all means, train something hard. But is it necessary? Is it a good idea? Or at least you might want to temper it. You want to do MMA, good for you, but temper it with the knowledge. How much am I making off this? Is it worth it? Is it, By the way, in the 70s and 80s, a concussion was called a headache. We were just like, whatever.
Yeah, but when you take a look at Muhammad Ali last years, it is sad. Yeah. George St. Pierre, like, he retired at a good time, I think, because after a fight, he looked like a mess. And even though, like, sometimes at interview, he's a little slow, but now he's better. But when he used to have interview after a fight, that wasn't fast, like, because, so I think it was the good time, like, to him to stop. Even though he could, it doesn't mean he should, because...
Well, he's an intelligent man, first of all, so that's...
But people don't get that. They're like, oh, keep going, George. Well, man, that's health at some point, He doesn't have to prove anything more.
Of course not. No. And you guys are all fighters, so you know the difference between a 16-ounce glove and an MMA glove. A 4-ounce glove right in the face by heart. That's crazy, stupid, painful. That's hard. I don't want to get hit like that. Agreed? So
Yeah.
I mean, you're young. Maybe you can take a few people who know how to hit right in the face by a 4-ounce glove. That's not a joke.
Uh-uh.
It's not healthy, man. It's just
It's
not.
almost as is nothing, you know.
Exactly.
And the rubber is gonna the more it's gonna hit, is gonna open your skin. So it's like
and
it's not
the
cool.
guy hitting doesn't hurt his hand,
Yeah.
so he can hit more. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, I
So
don't know. It's a no
tough.
joke. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no joke.
Kung Fu basic, yeah.
There's quite a few actually. I'm not a big MMA fan, or I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Let me rephrase that. I don't watch a lot of sports on TV. I don't watch hockey. I don't watch baseball. I don't watch anything. So MMA, I follow on occasion as a party and they want to watch. And for me, it's irritating because all the guys at the party are screaming what the fighters should do, and not one of them trains. Right? I'm just like, oh god, whatever. But regardless, I know there's several kung fu guys in MMA. I think Jérémy could name them more than I could. But I do know you'll see plenty of kung fu techniques.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I don't like, and this isn't any is you take somebody's technique and then you say it's yours, and I'm like, well, that's rather dishonest. Now it's an MMA spinning back fist. Superman punch, 1850 Choi Lei foot. It's called Fei Chop Choi. You fake with the knee, pop, you punch with the leopard fist. It's nothing new. So it's okay to take the techniques, but at least give credit where credit is due. So
I think people stole it and don't even know it now in mixed martial arts.
That's right.
Because there's no respect at all.
Spinning back fist. I'm like, come on, the spinning back fist comes from one art or another. Hello, So it's same another critique you'll get often, and it's just the people who don't know. I'll show two of my not bad students sparring. The guy goes, "Hey, looks like kickboxing. Where's the kung fu?" Time out. Kind of a stupid comment. So if I punch with a phoenix eye, here's my phoenix eye. I punch with a leopard fist. Now I put a glove on. Oh, he's doing boxing. How can I win? So if you punch me and I use high level kung fu and I dodge and hit you, the guy's, where's the kung fu? I thought he was going to do the crane. It just gets stupid. You know what I mean? So people don't know what they're talking about most of the time. So in other words, any martial art within a confined rules is going to look very much like the other guys, given or take a few techniques because of the rules, because of the gear. Was I going to stand in a flying crane stance like this with gloves on while the guy punches me in the stomach? Of course not. I'm not stupid.
So, I think it's a good ending.
Good ending, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. And we hope we could have you some other time with other masters.
Hope to see you in my store. We'll have some tea.